Data collection to activation is at the heart of what Tealium does. And today we'll take data wherever it sits and use it to solve real business challenges. I'm going to cover how we do that from two perspectives. We're going to look at the use of cloud data warehouse data to trigger customer communications. And then I'm going to look at combining AI and modeled data from the cloud data warehouse with real-time behavior to optimize a campaign. I'm going to walk through this step by step, and what you're seeing on screen now is the data flow that supports the two use cases. The first one driven solely by the CDW, in this case Snowflake on the top left. We've already got renewal date for a renewal campaign, and now we're going to be processing a propensity to churn. The other use case is going to take some more CDW, customer data, cloud data warehouse data, and real-time behavioral data from web and app and combine it. So there'll be online interactions like adding to a shopping cart, and there will be a propensity to transact score that's come from the CDW. Now, both of these will trigger email campaigns. Today I'm using Klaviyo for that. So there's a renewal campaign and transaction abandonment. And right at the end, I'll show you how to synchronize data from all that behavioral interaction that we have back into the CDW at the end of all the processing that's taking place. So it all starts with the configuration of the data sources, how we process data from those external systems. In this case, it's near real time, so it's seconds, not minutes. So I'm going to show you first the data source setup, and we'll go from there. Back to the data flow, top left, we've got our cloud data warehouse, and that's going to be bringing the data in and processing. So let's see how that works. So looking on screen, we're going to move into data sources. Some of you may be familiar with data sources. We use this to track web and app data and other vendor-specific data as it flows into the customer data hub. But we have a new one called the data warehouse category, and here's Snowflake. Now in here, I'm going to pull in propensity to churn and a propensity to transact data. Let's go through the configuration. The first thing is to connect to the data warehouse. So I've got a connection set up already, and what I want to do is establish that connection to allow me to look at the configuration and then use that in my data source. So that's pulled back a set of tables that I have access to. And in there is the customer model data table. The next stage is to decide whether or not I want to just set up the configuration and test it or immediately starting processing. Well, I want to show you live data, so I'm going to leave it on. And now we get into the query. What's in the data? How does the data source work? Well, in the table that I'm pulling data from, there will be a timestamp for that data and a unique identifier, and we need to provide that. So these drop-downs show us the columns inside Snowflake table that I'm going to use for timestamp and unique ID. And then query that table to pull back data. First of all, what columns do I need? I need an email address to identify the customer, the churn score, and the propensity to transaction score. We'll select all of those. We can change our query with various clauses, but in this case, I'm just going to test what's already in there as a standard select. And it brings me back some data to look at. 3 rows of data from an individual, their churn score, their propensity to transact scores have changed, and you've got a unique ID and a modification time. That looks good to me, so let's continue. To process the data, we have to map those columns to known attributes inside Tealium. So the email address is going to map to customer email. The churn score will map to churn score, and the transaction completion to transaction completion. We don't need that modification time or unique ID. They're just for the processing of the data source. So we'll leave those and move forward to the rest of it. How do we recognize who the customer is? We have visitor identification and visitor IDs. So we'll map the email address to a visitor ID called customer email address. And that's it. The data source is configured. I get a summary of it, columns, attributes, and then identification attributes, and we're done. So it's pretty easy. So let's look at now what that looks like when I process the data. So I save and publish that, and I'll move to live events. Many of you will know live events as where we can see all the data flowing through the system, and we can pull out individual data sources and events and interrogate them and see what's coming on. In this case, we're going to get some data that we've not seen before, indicated in blue. You can click on that and see what data's come in. And you'll see that I'm highlighting now that there's a churn score, an email address, and a transaction complete score. So it looks like that's worked. Excellent. So we've now got a near real-time data source configured to process data from Snowflake. What do we do with that data? Let's drive a campaign using just the CDW data within an audience. We will bring ourselves now to focus on that data flow at the customer data hub itself. Snowflake already gives us renewal dates, and now we've got our propensity to churn score that I just showed you setting up. So this gives us a renewal campaign. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to enhance an existing renewal campaign where you might look at triggering communications within 90 days of renewal. And I'm going to actually set it up that I'm going to trigger it earlier if I get a propensity to churn score above a certain threshold. So let's see how that works. So I'm inside the audiences screen of the customer data hub. And the first thing I want to do is show you what that standard renewal campaign looks like. So I'll create a new audience so that we've got something to refer to. The renewal campaign, as I said, is using that renewal date, and using these drop downs, you can see how easy it is to say renewal date less than or equal to a time frame, that time frame being 90 days from now. So now anytime we process customer data, it's really easy to just trigger that campaign. Simple enough for now. So that's great. That will give us any customers that within their renewal period. But what if I want to trigger it sooner? And this is where that data I just brought in from Snowflake can help. Because I'm going to model, I've got this model of where the users will churn, and it gives me the opportunity to take action. So let's update our audience to add in a clause that says, if the propensity to churn score is greater than 80%, I'm going to take action now and not just within the usual window. So that gives me a usual renewal or an option to step in if I need to when the machine learning tells me otherwise, that I should take action sooner. So it's pretty easy to add the Cloud Data Warehouse data and trigger a campaign. So there you have it. Cloud Data Warehouse, renewal data, propensity to churn, and a new augmented renewal campaign. Let's have a look at another audience. So I want to talk about an audience that combines some real-time behavioral data and with model data. So this second audience is for anyone that manages journeys and processes within their business. So we've just had financial services on stage. There will be applications for their products, loans, bank accounts, etc. Travel, booking processes for flights and hotel rooms. Retail, most people are familiar with shopping carts. So let's have a look at how real-time behavior and the actions people are taking combine with the Cloud Data Warehouse AI data that I've got works. So back at our data flow, we've now got real-time behavioral data at the bottom there. So we've got that telling me in real time what people are doing on the website. I've got my propensity to transact, which has come in from the Cloud Data Warehouse. We'll bring it together in an audience to target those that abandon a transaction. Now, the idea here is to reduce the target audience based on their propensity to transact. So we'll exclude people that we don't think will ever transact. That might mean that you can reduce your campaign costs by only targeting those that are likely to transact. Or maybe with the same budget, you can spend more to bid for them on paid media. So we're back in the audiences screen here. And instead of targeting every person, just those with a chance of transacting. So that means we're going to take a retail journey where the cart has been abandoned. And we're only going to focus on the top 80% of those that are within that audience and ignore 20%. So we'll start by creating a standard campaign first. So the behavioral data campaign, add to cart. Have they added to cart? It's true. That's the first stage in our campaign. If they're an abandoner, we need to check whether they've purchased or not, having added to cart. So, has completed purchase is false. And then we can save segments. One here, simple segment, visit has ended. So as the visit has ended, they've added to cart but not purchased. That sounds like a simple way to define an abandonment campaign. Now, at the moment, that will target everybody. And we want to reduce that set down using the propensity to transact score. So we'll add it in to this audience. We'll click Add Segment. We'll choose from the drop-down the propensity to transact, and then we'll set that to be for anybody greater than 20%. So we're getting rid of that bottom 20% of people that won't transact. And it's really easy with these drop-downs to do that. I've set that to 20%. So now we've got an abandonment campaign augmented by the AI data to focus more tightly on people likely to transact, perhaps at lower cost or with a better outcome from using more money to bid on those likely to transact. So that's how you combine AI data with behavioral data. And it's simple, but potentially allows more effective audiences. But we're not done yet because you're probably thinking, I need to activate that data. You haven't sent the campaign yet, Ian. Come on. So let's do that. Activation. So I'm going to start with the final of two sections, which is about using real-time activation of that data. At the right-hand side of the screen, in this data flow, you see email activation has appeared. So now data's starting to come out of Tealium. I'm going to use Klaviyo in this example, but as you'll probably know, there are hundreds of native integrations in Tealium. Paid media, social media, your owned media, analytics, etc. And this would be a really long presentation if I was to set up every single one of those. So we'll just focus on email for now. But I'm going to show you how easy it is to configure the integration, to choose data to send to a third party and make sure you identify the customer successfully. So we're going to move into the connectors overview, where you can see all the connectors that are set to activate data in different platforms. And if I want to add a new connector or do a new action, I'll go into our marketplace and I can filter by categories. I can choose whether it's event-based or visitor-based data. And I'm going to search here for Klaviyo, because search is the other option to get there. And you see the connector. Clicking on the connector tells me all the information I need to know, the actions I can take, the data types that it acts on. And it shows me that I've already got a connector configured. So actually, all I need to do is define a new action. So what's my trigger? Well, we created a renewal audience earlier on. So we're going to find the renewal audience, and the trigger is going to be as soon as somebody enters that audience, as soon as that Cloud Data Warehouse data is filled. We need to choose an action within the connector. I want to add somebody to a list in Klaviyo immediately to get that campaign going. So I select Add User to List in real time, and then we move on to the final stage. We automatically bring back all the available lists in Klaviyo, so it's just a simple drop-down to choose the churn risk campaign that already exists in Klaviyo. I could have created my own list, though. Finally, who is the user? Map an email to the customer email attribute inside Tealium, and we're done. So that's pretty easy to set up. And there's a lot of efficiency there because you don't need to code or maintain any of those integrations. Select the data, select the third party, and let Tealium do the hard work. Now, the final part of this session is what happens to any new data that's been generated. There was a lot of real-time behavior. There was engagement data. What was I doing on the cart? All of that has happened in real time, and we want to synchronize that with the Cloud Data Warehouse. We want to keep all the customer data in the Cloud Data Warehouse up to date as soon as it happens. So in the last part of the data flow, at the end of the interaction, there's a specific audience set up to send data directly into the Cloud Data Warehouse. So let's go through how easy it is to set up the Snowflake Snowpipe streaming API connector that we have to push data into the Cloud Data Warehouse. Back inside our connectors screen, you'll see that I've already got a Snowflake streaming data connector. It's just in the middle on the left-hand side. And because it already exists, I just need to click on a new action. So I click on the action, and I choose that it's visitor data. And I just need to send, when do I send it? There's an all visitors audience, so that's everybody in the system. And I'm going to trigger that at the end of every interaction. So send at end of visit. Pretty easy to set up. You can completely configure the data that gets sent to the Cloud Data Warehouse. But I'm going to take the easy option for our demonstration and just click Send All Data. So send everything into Snowflake. The final bit, you'll talk to your Snowflake administrator, and they'll give you a database name, a schema name, and a table name. And from there, we'll bring back all the attributes and all that database information for you to just pull data down in a drop-down. What we need to do, just like with our data source, is say, I need a unique ID and I need a timestamp for the data that goes in the table. That's what Snowflake wants to work with. So those drop-downs are really easy to choose that, and it's done. So now at the end of every session, I am able to synchronize visitor data directly into the Cloud Data Warehouse. And that's it. So at the end of all customer data processing, we synchronize to the CDW. So the end-to-end data flow that I showed you is now complete. And if you take one thing from today's session, I'd like it to be that Tealium has got those native integrations to and from the Cloud Data Warehouse to allow you to process and synchronize the data as it happens. Now, I've shown Snowflake today, but we also support Google BigQuery, Databricks, AWS, Azure, and there's others. And I'm here with a group of solution consultants, product managers, and engineers manning the Genius Bar. And we'd love to show you more and talk with you more about it as you like. So come and see us and enjoy Digital Velocity.